Dana White is the president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, but he is also infamous for having no filter. He always says what's on his mind, and a lot of times he's pretty mad, and the things he has to say, well, they're simply shocking. So here are 10 times that Dana White got so mad he literally lost it on live TV. Number 10. Fired Paul Daley on live TV. Paul Daley was said to be one of the most talented fighters in MMA. When he came over to the States from England, everyone thought he would be one of the biggest names in the sport, but he didn't really play his cards right. In UFC 113 in 2010, the fight between Josh Koscheck and Paul Daley was one that was dramatic, even after it ended. Throughout the fight, Koscheck annihilated Daley and trash-talked him throughout, knowing that Daley had a temper. After the final bell had rung, Daley sucker punched Koscheck and allegedly even gouged at his eyes. That was enough to make White really mad. Right after the fight had ended, in the interviews, White said, "He's done. I don't give a shit if he's the world's best 170-pounder. He'll never come back here again. We're all human, but there's no excuse for that. You don't blatantly hit a guy after the bell like that, whether you're frustrated or not. It was probably one of the dumbest things I've ever seen." He ended it by saying he'll never fight in the UFC ever again. And thus far, White has stuck to that statement, and Daley has not been seen in the UFC in the entire decade that followed the event. Number 9. Said Joe Cortez ruined the fight he was refereeing. It's pretty usual for Dana White to lash out on people that are a part of the UFC, but it can be pretty shocking when he goes off on people in other fields. Joe Cortez was one of them. The 2011 fight between Floyd Mayweather and Victor Ortiz was one of the biggest events that year, but it was also one of the most controversial. Mayweather won via knockout in the 4th round, but right after the fight had ended, White spoke about how Cortez pretty much ruined the entire fight. He said that Cortez could see that Ortiz had been headbutting Mayweather from the 1st round, and in the 4th turned a blind eye to an intentional foul. He pointed out how Cortez should have gotten between them and sent them to neutral corners, brought in a doctor to check Mayweather and taken 2 points away for the foul, but he did none of that. He concluded the statement by saying that Cortez ruined a multi-million-dollar fight and is the worst ref I've seen in boxing ever. Number 8. Gave Larry Merchant a reality check. When White made the previous statement about Cortez, he also went to roast commentator Larry Merchant. Immediately after the fight had ended, Merchant interviewed Mayweather and basically accused him of playing dirty again and again. When Mayweather eventually got angry and refused to continue the interview, he responded by saying, "If I were 50 years younger, I'd kick your ass." This made a whole lot of people angry, including Dana White. In a statement he said, "Who the hell would want to do an interview with him? The guy's senile, he's out of his mind. He's out there berating Floyd, but Floyd can't say anything back to you? You've been disrespecting guys your whole career. And guess what? You can go back 60 plus years. You're not kicking Floyd's ass." Number 7. George St. Pierre's Vaseline scandal. In UFC 94 in 2009, the fight between George St. Pierre and BJ Penn ended with St. Pierre knocking out Penn between rounds. What looked like a fair fight ended up being in the middle of one of the weirdest controversies ever. It turns out someone in St. Pierre's corner was rubbing Vaseline all over his back to give him an advantage while grappling. UFC was promoting a rematch between the two, and White went over to Rashad Evans, another MMA fighter, during a live interview and said, "George is in trouble by the commission. The corner got caught rubbing Vaseline all over his back." White told Rashad Evans and David Lasso, who were in attendance, "Someone's a fucking idiot in the corner. How could you fucking do that? That's so fucking stupid." Evans was so shocked by what he was hearing that he couldn't even say anything back to him. Number 6. Gary Shaw's challenge not accepted. Gary Shaw was the president of Elite XC, a promotion company. He came at Dana White claiming that Elite XC was nipping at the heels of the UFC in the MMA market. He kept slamming the UFC in interviews and said Dana doesn't know what he's doing. Every time he signs someone, they get beat right away. I guess if you want to get beat right away, you should go to the UFC. It's like I said all along, Dana didn't invent mixed martial arts. He doesn't own the best fighters in the world, and he doesn't have the best fights in the world. He should come down and look at our show, although I'm sure he watches them free on Showtime. White did not take the insult lightly and responded by saying Gary Shaw's a fucking loser. If we were getting competition, it's not coming from Elite XC and both of the people who are watching their shows. This guy's a low-level bottom feeder. He didn't like MMA a few years ago, but when he finally couldn't make money at boxing anymore, he came over to this sport to try to leech money out of it. Although it was an outburst by White, he wasn't really wrong, and less than 2 years later, in 2008, Elite XC shut down for good. Number 5. Called Floyd Mayweather a racist. Dana White and Floyd Mayweather have had quite a confusing relationship over the years. While sometimes White defends Mayweather, he's also very critical of him at the same time. On an episode of the UFC Tonight Show, White went after Mayweather for not agreeing to fight Manny Pacquiao. He said, "Don't worry about what all these other guys are doing and shooting your big mouth off on Twitter. What you should worry about is getting in there and making the fight that all the boxing fans want to see. Get in there and fight Manny Pacquiao. You don't deserve more of the purse. If there ever were a fight in history that should be split 50-50, it's the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight. Shut up, both of you split the money up and put on the fight that everybody, including me, wants to see. He then spoke about a tweet that Mayweather had posted where he said that Jeremy Lin was a good player, but all the hype is because he's Asian. Black players do that every night and don't get the same praise. First of all, what he said I think was racist. He's made a couple of racist comments, and yes, Floyd, you're racist with the stuff you said. First of all, Jeremy Lin gets all of his credit because he's an Asian player in the NBA that African Americans never get. Yeah, he's getting all this praise because he's an Asian guy playing in the NBA. You say that African Americans don't get it? Really? Kobe Bryant doesn't get any praise? Michael Jordan never got any praise? The list goes on and on of the guys who completely get praised for being great NBA basketball players. Not only can he compete and make it in the NBA, the guy is tearing it up and is breaking records, you knucklehead, okay? He concluded his rant by telling Mayweather to shut up and make the fight. Number 4, humiliated TODD DUFFE. When TODD DUFFE was working his way up as a heavyweight fighter, he showed promise, but he also knew that he was a good fighter, which might have gone to his head. In his first ever UFC fight, he knocked out his opponent, SYLV, within 7 seconds, and was very confident while going into his second fight against Mike Russo. But he got too confident and ended up losing the fight, and White was not happy. He said in an interview with Ariel Helwani after the fight, "The biggest problem I have with TODD DUFFE is his attitude. You guys don't see it, you don't know. I deal with tons of guys. We have hundreds of guys under contract, and I've had thousands of guys under contract over the last 10 years. And TODD DUFFE, to me, doesn't seem like he wants to be in the UFC. He doesn't like being in the UFC. Let him go fight in the smaller organizations and work his way back up. If he even wants to work his way back up and get back into the UFC. He just came off a knockout. He got knocked out in his fight and he's got a horrible attitude. He's got a horrible attitude. He can still go back and train and fight in these smaller leagues and work on his skills and his attitude." DUFFE was later released from the UFC for unknown reasons and has not made a comeback ever since. Number 3, called Tom Atencio a loser. At a conference in Biloxi, Mississippi in 2009, MMA fighter and Affliction co-owner Tom Atencio called out Dana White, saying some things that's been done in the UFC I don't think is right. I think it's time to step up. Sometimes Dana White acts like a fighter, so why doesn't he fight? Dana acts like an 800-pound gorilla, but he's not. He acts and talks like a fighter, but he's not. If I were being brutally honest, he's a bully. White snapped back at Atencio at a UFC conference and said, "Tom Atencio is a fucking loser, okay? He's not a good promoter and he's not a good fighter. In my heyday, if I said I would have fought Tito Ortiz, I definitely would have fought Tom Atencio, okay? But I'm not going to waste my time training 1 minute or thinking 1 minute about Tom Atencio." Number 2, bash Tim Sylvia. Tim Sylvia was a UFC heavyweight champion, but lost it to Frank Mir in 2001. He eventually ended up leaving the UFC to fight in Affliction, but didn't really have a lot of luck there either. Then there were rumors that he wanted to fight in the UFC again. When White was asked about what he thought of the rumor, he freaked out and said, "Are you kidding me? He seriously wants to return to the UFC. He hasn't won a fight in years, and when he did, he usually put everyone to sleep. The only time he's in an exciting fight is when he's getting his ass handed to him. Look, he just got beat by a near 50-year-old in under 10 fucking seconds. How do you expect to be taken seriously after that? He just made MMA look like a complete joke. If he has any hopes of ending his career in the UFC, he will have to go on The Ultimate Fighter. There's no other way he's getting in." Number 1, called Oscar De La Hoya a liar. One of the longest feuds when it comes to Dana White is his feud against Oscar De La Hoya. The two have repeatedly butted heads, and it seems like the feud will go on for all eternity. One of the most memorable moments in the feud was when Dana White was so mad at Oscar De La Hoya that he literally called him out for lying on live TV. He went on ESPN's First Talk and said, "It's one thing to sit around with your friends and lie. It's another thing to go on ESPN and lie." He then went on by calling out each lie and set the record straight with numbers in hand. He talked about how much UFC fighters are actually paid and how he does care about his fighters, and basically spent the entire interview calling De La Hoya a liar, a moron, and an idiot. This is one of the craziest outbreaks Dana White has had on live TV, and certainly one that no one's going to forget anytime soon. And with that, this was our roundup of the top 10 times that Dana White lost it on live TV. To watch more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and we will see you in the next one.